Welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. Tips, tools, and tactics for living a heart-centered life that honors Mother Earth and her inhabitants. The information shared on the Sustainable Living Podcast reflects the opinions of host Marian West, Janice Friant, and their guests. Please use your own discretion and research before applying any information to your individual situation. Now, here are your hosts, Marian and Janice.
Welcome, everyone. Today I am excited to be joined by Jenny Gomes. She has a website called The Domestic Wildflower, through which she teaches people how to can food, sew, and make all kinds of crafty things. And I know you guys are all into that. So welcome, Jenny.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, we're excited. I would love to hear more. I had a great look at your website. There's so much fun stuff going on there and stuff that I know our audience would be very interested in. You're really kind of hearkening back to the old days of when we really did things from scratch instead of bought everything. And, you know, we're really big on that around here. So before we get before we get going on that, would you please share your story and what brought you to this place in life?
Well, I was raised in a very rural part of very northern California. I'm from Siskiyou County, so that is the northernmost tip-top of California in the center, up by the Oregon border. And most people think Northern California is in San Francisco, and it's actually not. It's way up by Oregon, and it's like 3,000 feet elevation up here, and we raise cattle up here, and we have a pretty significant timber industry. So I grew up on a cattle ranch and went to a school that served 4 communities, and in my high school graduating class, there were 70 kids. So that just means that I'm a small town girl, and there were no stoplights in my town.
Wow, and that's so shocking. I got to say, for California, you never hear that.
I know, and I just I always like to share that because I think growing up, of course, I didn't realize how unusual that was, and I didn't realize how that really was such an advantage. You know, it just seemed like it seemed like a disadvantage at the time. It really did. Like, I remember going into my first year of college at Chico State, and I remember feeling like I was at a disadvantage because I didn't know how to get around in the city and stuff. But all those things can be learned, but learning the things that I already knew how to do was a much greater advantage. So anyway, I just grew up in a really different way, I guess. And I grew up watching my mom and grandma garden and can, and, I moved cattle to the mountains on horseback in the summertime. And, I mean, we had, TV and electricity and stuff, and I don't mean to say that I was, super off the grid or anything. But I just grew up in a kind of a different way that was, less material and more DIY than your average bear. And I went to college to become an English teacher, and I didn't expect to get a teaching job in my hometown right away, but it just worked out that I ended up getting a teaching job at home right away. So I ended up moving back home to my town, and I taught at home here for ever since. So that's been 10 years.
What do you teach?
English.
Okay.
I'm an English teacher. So I taught at the high school, junior high, and in between there, I got married and had 2 small children, and now I teach at my community college, and that allows me to teach just 1 day a week so I can stay home with my kids. Wow. So in between there, while I was in college, I worked at Joann's Fabrics, which is a chain store, and they sell fabric and DIY supplies, and that was really the very beginning kernel of my blog and the real beginning of this whole idea of me realizing that I knew stuff that other people didn't. And by that I mean every single day at Joann's Fabrics, customers would say to me, oh, you're so talented. Oh, you know so much. Oh, I could never do that. And it was so clear to me that women who would say this to me, like they were like accountants, mothers who were raising children and doing all kinds of amazing things, thought that they couldn't crochet a scarf, thought that they couldn't can jam, thought that they couldn't decorate a cake. Mm-hmm. That is bananas, right? Mm-hmm. And you and I know that that's crazy. But there, every single day, women came in thinking that they couldn't put a button on or fix their kid's soccer jersey or hem their own. It was just crazy, right? Mm-hmm. But every day. Mm-hmm. And I worked there the whole time I was in college.
Wow.
So for 4 years, I heard this over and over and over.
Yeah.
So that was really in my mind of how it became very clear to me that there was not just a handful, but a very sizable population of people believing that they could not do these things, and I knew that they could. So there, in the back of my mind, and again, I was an English major, I was always an avid reader and writer, and I was studying to become an English teacher, and so I always kind of in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, somehow that I wanted to help educate people, and I'm a natural teacher. I'm the oldest child of 3 kids. I love teaching people things, and I'm kind of bossy, so it kind of just in the back of my mind all along, I knew I wanted to share with people what I know and what I love to do. So then, I become an English teacher, and then I get married, and I have my 2 kids, and when my second child was 1, and one of my good friends called me up, and she and I both had our kids strangely enough at exactly the same time, and so we were both kind of stuck at home mm-hmm. with our babies. And she was like, "I want to build you a blog. Can I build you a blog?" I said, "Yes, go ahead and build it." So she built me a blog, and it was like I had no hesitation at all, even though I knew nothing about blogging. I knew absolutely nothing about like how a blog worked technology-wise. I knew nothing about social media marketing. I knew nothing about it. I just knew exactly what I was going to blog about, and I knew exactly the type of person I wanted to target. It was those women at Joann's who were telling me that they didn't know how to sew on a button.
Yeah, what you just said just brings up to me this idea of I can't do this. I'm not crafty. This idea that we get, about who we are and what we're capable of. Absolutely incredible that you're talking to lawyers and they're telling you they can't do these things, which makes me think. And as you said, they had classes there that they could learn, but they were just really kind of stuck on. They weren't the kind of person who could do this stuff or whatever.
Oh yeah, tons of self-limiting belief there, tons.
Really, how does that work? I mean, when you're talking to them, where do you think this comes from?
I encounter a lot of this honestly with like teaching writing. Mm-hmm. It's like a lot of this. It's all in between your ears. You believe you can't do something, mm-hmm. and you really have to be told point blank, you absolutely can. Let me show you how. Mm-hmm. First, watch me do it. Then let's do it together. Mm-hmm. Now you do it by yourself. Mm-hmm. I think it has to be that direct. You really have to be willing to try it yourself, I think. Well, I don't know where. I mean, with canning specifically, there's a ton of mystique built up around that. Mm-hmm. And I think, once one pressure canner explosion happens, the whole world thinks that canning is a deadly activity, uh-huh. And it's not. Mm-hmm. We all know that. Mm-hmm. But I encounter a ton of mythical, nonsense about canning in particular. But it's a mystery still to me why people believe they cannot do these things when it seems so obvious that they can.
Well, it kind of seems like, and I think this is an important topic in a sense because, with sustainable living, for instance, or with, mm-hmm. preparedness or homesteading or whatever, you kind of have to embrace the idea that you can be a jack of all trades if you want to be successful. You have to kind of maybe I don't know this, but I can learn it. It seems to me that a lot of people in our society today, we just, I'm going to do this thing because I'm really good at it. And, I can't do anything else because I'm only really good at this, you know?
Absolutely. And you said jack of all trades. Even if we could just become a jack of a few trades,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be good at everything inside the home, but if you just learned a few more skills, I just feel like the sense of empowerment that comes from learning a few more things that you can do yourself is phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely.
Once you learn, oh, wow, I really can fix this one thing. Or, look at this Halloween costume I made my kid. That looks pretty good. That's so empowering. You don't have to, put in a whole acre garden. You could just do one thing. Make one batch of jam.
Yeah.
Do one thing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing self-confidence booster. And it doesn't have to be a huge project.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know from my own experience, every time I do something like that, then it starts to make me think, oh, well, I could do this. Well, why can't I learn this other thing? So pretty soon you aren't so limited in all the things you can do, and you don't feel like you're only this one. You're only this one type of person who can only do these certain things.
Yes. Exactly, and that's what the whole belief system is like. Oh, I'm not a crafty person. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
Of course you can.
Yeah, and especially with websites like yours that are really geared towards, people who are just beginning. You're teaching skills that we all used to learn in school in home economics. I don't know if you had home economics when you were in school, but I'm old enough to remember that. We didn't learn how to can. Okay, we made pies, and the way we made pies, you bought the filling, but you made the crust.
Right.
At least it was, something. And then we learned how to sew. We sewed from patterns and stuff, and it was really great. I mean, maybe as I went through life, I didn't really do much of that until now. I'm starting to do more of it again. But again, it gave me that feeling like, hey, I learned it when I was in high school, so I could probably do it later on in life if I need to. But tell me, why do you think teaching these kinds of skills is important?
Well, I think for lots of reasons. So I don't usually reveal this, but I'm actually technically at the very tip of the Millennial Generation. Please don't tell anybody that. but I'm 33, so I'm actually, if you technically, part of this generation that supposedly doesn't do anything for themselves. And I don't fit that mold at all. When I went to college, I was busy helping friends, like shorten dresses and take in clothes and help make Halloween costumes. And it just seems that my generation and those younger than me, really, really suffer because they don't know how to do lots of really simple things for themselves.
Yeah. So getting rid of home economics might not have been such a great idea.
Like I had home economics in high school, and I did have a great high school. Even though I did go to a small school, my school did a great job of providing in lots of ways. We had a great FFA program. Lots of rural places get a bad rap of having crappy schools, and mine was I had a great high school education.
Great.
However, our home ec program was definitely abbreviated, and I did go to college and high school with lots of people who didn't learn how to do lots of these things. I was easily, far and away, the only girl, around that could sew. Sew at all.
Wow.
Sew anything.
Wow.
Like if you had an important event, a job interview, and then you are unable to wear that garment the next day because you're missing a button, that seems really silly to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating. There were more than one time that I sewed a button on for a friend of a friend because of that exact situation.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think how many people, because the fast fashion industry that we all know, you have the Forever 21s and all these places that sell this really cheap clothing. It's very fashionable, but it's not well made, and it's cheap, very inexpensive. So it makes me wonder how many people they don't need to learn how to sew because they just buy so many things that they always have something, and when a button falls off, they just give it a Goodwill or throw it away.
Oh, right. And I mean, I am not educated enough on the grave social and environmental cost of the fast fashion industry, but I'm sure the future generation will have a very heavy price to pay for that.
Mm-hmm.
But so I can't comment very very specifically on that, but I do know that just being able to do something for yourself, I think, is really a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just being able to solve a problem quickly and easily. I'm not saying everybody needs to be a skilled couturier
mm-hmm.
and craft a Renaissance gown for Halloween or for their child's role in the school play.
Mm-hmm.
No, but being able to just be able to do a few things
mm-hmm.
with the sewing machine or by hand, or preserve a few things if they wanted to. I think everybody should have a few of those skills.
Yeah, well, it sounds like what you're really talking about is resourcefulness. Like what?
Yeah, I really am.
Everything goes swimmingly well if our system the way it is. I mean, just for the individual now in this moment. Obviously, as you mentioned before, 20 years down the road, there's going to be a price to pay. But for now, everything goes swimmingly well until something breaks down in the system, like the stores close and you don't have access to this, or whatever. Maybe you don't have enough money to go down and buy even the cheap stuff. There's so many things that actually could happen that would break this whole system down. Right. And then where are you if you're not, if you don't even think in those terms of, well, what can I do to fix this?
People that live in very, very rural places or in other countries in the world that really suffer from an inconsistency in the power delivery have a very different life than I live. But I do live in a place where we do suffer from fairly frequent power outages. They don't last for many days in a row, but several times a month we lose power for several minutes, mm-hmm. right? And many places in the world lose power for several days mm-hmm. a month, right? Mm-hmm. And losing power means that you should be able to preserve food. Mm-hmm. So it seems very sensible to me that being able to can just one little batch of something, just once, just once every once in a while, seems like a very basic skill. Very basic.
Yeah. Well, how did you learn to can?
So my mom and grandma did it. And I remember that my job was basically like peeling. I remember sitting like on a stool in the kitchen and like looking up at their legs and big pots of water, lots of steam. And my job was just to peel and peel and peel and then haul the buckets of peels outside and then just come back in and keep peeling. And then when I was a teenager, my life got way more interesting, and I had way cooler things to be doing than to help them do anything. And so as a teenager, I just had no interest in helping my mom do anything. And then I experienced a domestic renaissance, let's say, when I was pregnant with my first child. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't care about picking out a baby theme, like a nursery theme. I just wanted to make, like, homemade baby food. I wanted to learn how to can again, and I wanted to have all this baby food made in jars, and I was thinking about, oh, my gosh, I was reading about, like, BPA, and I was thinking about, what am I going to feed this baby? And, like, I didn't even realize the baby wasn't going to eat food for another 6 months at least, that was, like, how I was nesting, I was just thinking about baby food.
I just have to stop here real quick because I think a lot of us women in particular, we get into this whole kind of sustainable living thing as mothers, because it's okay for us to eat junk food and do all these things that aren't really great for the planet until we have our, we don't really think about it too much. Then we have our kids and we're starting to think about the future. We're starting to think, oh, I am in charge of this little life and I need to do everything I can to ensure that, she's healthy and, she has the best start possible. Right. So that doesn't surprise me. I know even the birth of this podcast, really, my co-host and I, we did a whole podcast about how we were both in La Leche League, and we were La Leche League leaders, and that was really the birth of our real strong interest in sustainability. So I just had to interject that because that's I don't know if that's that point is made enough. In particular, how women, when we are mothers, we are really interested in this topic, and we a lot of times just go full bore, and food especially. I mean, and that's something, because it's so hard to find anything that doesn't have poison in the store, you know?
And I would not consider myself to be particularly environmental or green or any affiliation like that at all, even now. But when I became pregnant, I could not believe the inundation that I experienced from marketing, and I don't even have TV. The pressure I felt to buy, to consume, to purchase all kinds of garbage, some plastic crap that I did not need. I knew I did not need. And I knew in my heart there's no way I needed like a wipe warmer to be a good mom, right? But I like the blog post about what to register for your baby registry. And it was like, I don't need any of that. I'm sure of it, right? And I decided to use, this is a complete digression, but it does relate. I decided to use cloth diapers, and my friends, God bless them, they all said I was crazy. Like, you're never going to use those. Why are you getting those? And it was the best decision ever. Yeah. Anyway, I was pregnant, deciding to use cloth diapers, really thinking about my unborn baby's health, thinking like, I don't want to feed my kid crap. I don't want to use a plastic wipe warmer. I don't want to use plastic diapers. And that's when I started learning more about how to can all by myself, without my grandma, without my mom. So there I was with a big tummy standing in my tiny kitchen sideways, because your tummy doesn't let you reach into a boiling can with my aching back. And I just kind of re-taught myself how to can. And I made lots of horrible, stupid made lots of mistakes by myself, and taught myself how to can while I was pregnant. And I figured out lots of things the hard way, and I canned up like 100 jars of applesauce.
Wow. And I bet that was very satisfying for you.
Oh, it absolutely was. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a blast, and it was so comforting. And then, of course, my daughter was born in January, and she didn't eat that applesauce for another, 8 months. But it was really empowering to know, okay, I can make applesauce. That means that I'll be able to can other things. And once you've learned how to can one thing, okay, well then now I have the process down. I can learn how to can other things. I'll be able to feed her other healthy things.
You've just shared one really, really good reason for canning, and that is to, make sure as a new mom that you have a pantry full of stuff that you can give your kid at a moment's notice that doesn't have a lot of, chemical additives in it. So that's just one. Obviously, there are many others.
Oh, yeah. The baby food industry, or the whole baby food business, is a whole bunch of baloney. I mean, I don't mean to like bag on a specific company. What's that thing called? The baby bullet?
I'm not familiar with it.
Blender.
Is it?
Well, it's like a tiny blender.
Okay.
And it's priced like 4 times the price of a regular blender.
Wow.
And it's just a blender, right? And since you have to make these tiny batches every single day, it seems insane, but people buy it because they think, well, I have to make my baby food. But if you just can baby food, then you have to, it's just way better in every way. Yeah. But the canning industry just doesn't have a very good marketing team, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, first off, where's the money to be made there? I mean, it's always about.
I don't know.
Right, that's the thing. It's like who. If someone knows there's money to be made, they're going to manipulate, they're going to tap into your guilt feelings about parenting as much as they can. To be a good mom, you have to buy this stuff. And I think people are waking up to that more and more, hopefully.
I think so. I think it's a slow but sure thing. See, because people are buying these various make your own baby food gadgets. That's like a step in the right direction because they're not buying the pre-made stuff. I think it's a step in the right direction, but they're just failing to realize, like, oh, if I just can like a big batch of this all at once, then I'm only working for one afternoon. I don't have to get this silly blender out every day. And it's exactly the same and way less expensive. When I made all my applesauce, I used the teeny tiny 4-ounce jam jars of balls, like the tiniest jars they make. And that's baby size. That's exactly the baby. That's That's one baby serve.
Well, what you've done is you've taken something and you've made it into it's a convenience food, but it's healthy and it's homemade, you know, and that's the thing. You've not only have you created something healthy for your child, but you've also made it easier on yourself down the road so that you don't have to be getting out the blender and doing all these things every time you want to feed the baby. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think people realize that these things are convenient, you know. It's convenient to know these things.
I feel like when I was kind of making the decision, like, what kind of mom am I going to be? I felt like there were two choices. An easy mom is unhealthy, and a hard mom is healthy. And that doesn't have to be the case. There's lots of ways to be a healthy mom that are easy. And to me, canning makes being a healthy mom easy. And I have a hard time convincing people of that because they remember grandma canning all day long. But I really like to teach people on my blog. I try to can like small batch recipes or really easy recipes that are short, or like recipes that are like convenient size, like we're canning in teeny tiny jars that your kids can eat just in one serving. I try to really focus on that because I really believe canning has made being a healthy mom and having healthier kids easy. And when I was pregnant, I really felt like it was a choice that I had to choose. Healthy mom is going to be harder. And if you want to choose that, fine, but it's going to be harder. And that isn't so. That is not true.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be harder.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And so as you're talking to people, and obviously it seems like the popularity of your blog itself says something about this, about where people are these days. Why do you think they're getting this idea that canning and these kinds of skills are not necessarily going to take a ton of time and can actually help them to be more productive? Or why do you think canning and these kind of skills are enjoying a resurgence in popularity?
They are enjoying a resurgence, but not to the degree that I'd like. Our current food system isn't very satisfying, right? Like buying from the grocery store is innately unsatisfying. Like buying prepackaged everything isn't that satisfying. So there's something that is way, way more satisfying with making your own food. There's no way that grocery store can replicate that, right? And I think that as people discover that making their own food is a good way of cutting out, you know, the various health problems people are experiencing, whether it's gluten allergies or various food allergies or sensitivities or whatever the case may be, then it's like, oh, wow, well, that's a double win. Not only is cooking at home satisfying and more delicious, and now I don't have to worry about this awful gut issue or, you know, my skin irritation or, you know, my kid's allergy to whatever. The natural result is that homemade is better. So I think that's why there's a resurgence, but I think that it is a slow resurgence because there's this memory, and however false it may be, that it is hard, it is complicated, it is super time-consuming because of how grandma used to do it. And I mean in regards to canning, in regards to sewing, in regards to lots of things. So like in canning specifically, we remember how grandma and great-grandma used to can, and they did it a very different way for lots of practical reasons because they didn't have chest freezers. They didn't have like super fancy propane stoves where they could can and get boiling water going a lot faster than we can. They didn't have farmers markets available or a great Rayleigh's to go to, or they didn't have the modern conveniences that you and I have. So they had to can really big batches all day long when they had the produce available. So I think there's this kind of resistance to lots of the things that I love to teach people because of this memory or this idea that people think like, oh, that's going to be really hard or that's going to take a long time.
My grandma did some canning, but I was never around for that. And so I never had that experience to be around. The only time I ever did was I went to visit my friend, and her mother had harvested a bunch of olali berries, and she was making some jam. And I was so excited and thrilled about, helping and seeing how it was done. But I did my actual very first canning this just a few months ago. I picked some oranges from my mom's tree and made orange marmalade. And I was just, it was so cool. And it was a very small batch because, I didn't even really have exactly the right tools for it, but I made it work. And this marmalade was just the best I've ever had. So I'm very empowered to do it again, and it didn't take me all day at all.
Yeah. See, I think people should be comforted by the fact that canning is a science. And you don't even have to understand it at all if you just follow the directions.
Yeah, just like any recipe that you would have. It's just another recipe to follow. You just, we're just not used to doing it all the time. And as you said, in the old days, they would set aside a whole day and just do it all day. But we don't have to. We can do small batches, right? On your website, I was looking around there, and there's so many fun things that you've got there. One of the things I came across was a shrub, and I'd never heard about that before. Could you share why people might want to learn how to make a shrub and what it is?
Sure. So shrubs are like a really fun, kind of like a beginner preserve, like an even easier preserve than a canning preserve, and even easier than a ferment. I read, and I think that this is probably true. I didn't do any empirical research of my own, but I think this is probably true, that shrubs were the result of sailors storing or traveling across the ocean with fruit in barrels and seawater getting in the barrels of fruit and creating like a salty, vinegary mix with the fruit. So what a shrub is a mixture of fruit, sugar, and vinegar. And so because fruit are naturally high in acid and vinegar is naturally high in acid, you can leave them sitting on your countertop for the flavors to develop together with the sweetness of the sugar mixing together, and it makes a sweet tart syrup, and you can strain out the fruit after several days, and then you have this really delicious, flavorful syrup that you can mix into cocktails or into a vinaigrette or into lots of different things, and they're like the easiest preserve ever.
Oh,
they're delicious.
And then it sounds like that you've got all these ways that you can use them too. Cocktails for one. What kinds of cocktails do you make with shrubs?
Despite the fact that I have tons of cocktail recipes on my blog, I should be forthcoming and say I don't actually drink all that often. I really like shrubs with, I like them with I'll do one shot or an ounce or two of shrub in a mason jar with sparkling water. So shrubs really got popularized during the Prohibition era when alcohol was prohibited, and hostesses had to have something nice to serve to guests to come over when guests came over. So, and when they were really poor, right, during the Depression. So shrubs are a really frugal way of preserving a little bit of fruit, and they make kind of a fancy drink, okay? So you can have just a little bit of shrub into a lot of water, and you don't even have to add alcohol, as they would have in the Prohibition, and they make kind of a fancy drink. So you can add alcohol, of course, and they're really delicious if you do, but you don't have to if you don't care to drink.
And then you said vinaigrettes too. What kinds of vinaigrettes do you make with them? So
if you made a strawberry balsamic shrub, you could just mix it up with a little bit of olive oil and put that on top of a salad. Or you could mix, there's lots of different, it kind of depends on the kind of shrub you make, honestly. And just a shrub by itself mixed with a little oil would just be your vinaigrette.
I'm so curious because I've never heard about this before. How did you stumble upon it?
It was in a canning book from 1964. I have it right here. The Farm Bureau's cookbook from 1964. So, like, the Farm Bureau put out a cookbook every year. The Farm Bureau is like a lending institution, and they had a recipe section about shrubs, in addition to a recipe section about preserving vegetables and freezing jams and canning, and there's a section in there about them.
So you were just doing a little research on canning, and
yeah.
you stumbled on this. That makes me wonder how many other wonderful things that that were invented or popular in the 30s or even before that we've completely lost, and that are just waiting for somebody to rediscover, the way you rediscovered shrubs.
In the Prohibition especially really popularized kind of a lot of a drink category entirely that was devoid of alcohol, but really called upon frugality and this desire to still be a good hostess even though everybody was poor and nobody could get their hands on any alcohol. It just really was the mother of a lot of really great beverage invention, I think. It was really a neat time, I think, historically. And
so often that's the case, when we're in these limiting situations, the necessity is the mother of invention. We get a lot more creative. I think when we're at the stage where we have been for so long, where everything is just so easy to reach at our fingertips, kind of our creativity kind of takes a nosedive a little bit,
Right.
Yeah. So, hey, you do a lot of stuff here. You've got 2 kids. You're working as an English teacher, and you're running this blog. How in the world do you get all that done? I just wonder, what's your secret to productivity?
Oh gosh, I think I'm the master of deception. I don't feel like I get everything done at all. And thank you for the very nice compliment. I feel like my house work certainly leaves a lot to be desired, but I feel like I try to do 10 minutes of yoga every day, and that doesn't always happen at the start of the day, but if the end of the day comes and I still haven't done it, then I'll do it at the end of the day.
So you have your own home practice then that you do. Great.
Yes. So because I tried to make myself do it, by attending a yoga class in town, and as much as I enjoyed that, it was too hard to make that fit within my life schedule. Mm-hmm. And 10 minutes isn't very much, but sometimes I can fit in 20. But 10, as tiny as that is achievable, and that is working for now for me with having 2 small kids. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's like energizing and relaxing and wonderful in every way. Mm-hmm. And I try really hard to be focused in whatever I'm doing. So if I open my laptop, I'm not looking at Facebook. I have a purpose to whatever I'm doing, and that is what I'm going to do, and that's it.
That's a very important secret, I think, that a lot of us miss, yeah.
Oh, it is so hard. It's so hard, and I mean, I can't stress it enough. And I know I'm sure you have listeners who work from home or who also are moms. It's really hard to do. But
if you're disciplined like that, then you can get a lot more done. It's so easy to be distracted by social media and what have you.
Right. And so because now I'm teaching for my community college up here, and I have one class that's taught in person and one that's taught online. And everybody thinks, oh, online. Oh, well, you can just teach from home. Well, that is not as easy, let me tell you what, because if you have 2 small children, they want to, sit on your lap and ask you what you're typing and type with you and play on the bed, and it's a lot harder. So for the time that I do have where it's quiet and either they're, at preschool or whatever, I need to be hustling. Yeah. So I just try to really, really have a purpose for when I sit down. Okay, what am I doing before I even get in the chair? What am I going to be doing while I'm sitting down? So I just try to have a purpose in mind before I even get in the chair, I guess is my one little tiny tip.
Well, those are 2 excellent tips. I mean, obviously, we're big on yoga around here. Both Mariana and I are yoga teachers, and we don't know where we would be without it, just for our peace of mind and also for your body. Even that 10 minutes, it makes such a huge difference. So yeah.
After my son was born, he didn't sleep like the whole first year of his life, and it was really, really taxing because my daughter was such a good sleeper. And I was honestly, I was super stressed. I couldn't keep any weight on. I was, it was a really hard time for me. And I went and got my Yoga Fit level 1 certification, and I jokingly, but I was probably half serious, that if I didn't do that, I might have killed my husband in his sleep because I was so stressed out. And at that time, I made time to teach yoga 1 day a week in my little town, and I loved it. And now I have other work obligations I can't teach this year, but it was amazing. I needed it. Holy cow, I needed it.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely in strong agreement. Everybody needs something, whatever it is for you, walking or running or
exactly.
something.
And you have to do that. I think that too often, again, especially moms, we put everything before us. We don't really recognize how important it is to take care of ourselves, because if we are not healthy and in a good frame of mind, we can't do all the things that we need to do. So you can't see stuff like yoga or walking or whatever as a luxury. It has to be a necessity if you want to continue doing all the stuff you have to do. So yeah, huge.
No, it is paramount.
Yeah.
I know if I get to the end of the day and I'm in the shower, I'm the last one to take the shower. And if I'm in the end of the day and I haven't had 10 minutes of yoga, like, well, I'm going to end up doing yoga in the dark in my bedroom by myself. And that's fine, but I'm going to do it. Because otherwise, the next day, I won't have slept as well, and I'm going to be a cranky pants to my kids, and that's not good. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, great way of explaining it. Well, what can people learn from going to your website? I know I got a lot of really cool ideas that I maybe like to go back to and explore some more down the road. But in your own words, could you tell people what people can learn?
Okay, so my site is thedomesticwildflower.com. And that's a metaphor, and that is just sort of a silly English teacher way of me saying I hope that people who come to my site grow just like a wildflower does, without anything fancy, without any complicated, expensive. You don't need a whole lot of fluff in life. You can learn how to do awesome, amazing things with just the basics. And at The Domestic Wildflower, I have a free canning basics course that I think is really awesome and really valuable, and you'll find that there on the homepage there. And like I said, it's free, and in that course there's videos and some really great PDF resources that will help you understand like what pot goes where on the stove to help you get started with preserving food in glass jars. And a new course that I'm launching right now is called it's a steam canning workshop. So steam canning is kind of a new thing in the canning world. It's newly approved. There's not a whole lot of new things in the canning world in this old-fashioned niche of canning. But steam canning is newly approved by the FDA, and it's a pot that allows you to can a lot faster. And by a lot, I mean like ready in 5 minutes, not ready in 30 or 40 minutes.
Wow.
So, it's actually a huge time savings, and it's actually really advantageous for people who are canning in like an RV or canning in any kind of like kitchen where you're on propane, or if you can't lift more than 10 pounds. So people recovering from surgery or people who just for whatever reason can't lift more than 10 pounds. Steam canning is the hot ticket, and that information on that canning course is also on my homepage. Great. Wonderful. Yeah. It's really a neat thing, and it's so exciting that it was approved last year, and it really could be an awesome thing for lots of people, like people who live on sailboats. And if you were like recovering from like breast cancer surgery or in a wheelchair, people like lots of people will really benefit from it, I think. Oh. It's pretty exciting.
Thank you. I'd never even heard of it. I really appreciate you sharing that with everybody. I think that's exciting.
Everybody says that.
Okay. Well, so was there anything else that you want to share about what's going on with your domestic wildflower site or what you're doing?
I just hope to encourage everyone who's listening. I think there's lots of people who listen to podcasts like this and, check out blogs and think like, oh, I wish I could get chickens or learn to crochet, or I wish I could. You know what? You can. Mm-hmm. You absolutely can. You are smart and talented. And look at the things that you've achieved in your life. You have done some amazing things. You are totally capable. You can do these things. You absolutely can. And I hope that whoever you are listening out there, that you choose one thing, find a mentor, find a blog, find a book, and just learn how to do one little thing. And you will amaze yourself. You can do whatever it is you want to do. And then you'll learn the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for that powerful dose of inspiration. I think a lot of people are going to feel excited about tackling something new now. I know I am. How can people connect with you? I know can you share again your website and any other way that people can follow what you're doing?
Sure. You can reach out to me directly via email. My email address is Jenny, Jenny, at thedomesticwildflower.com. And I'm active on social media, on Instagram at a domestic wildflower. On Pinterest, I'm pinterest.com/Jenny Gomes. And I have a great Facebook group. I'd love to see everyone join. And you could just go to facebook.com and search Grow Like a Wildflower and ask to join that. In that Facebook group, we share recipes, and it's like a great place to ask, like, what a natural deodorant have you guys tried? And which, does anyone have a great recommendation for a smoothie blender? Or like lots of great conversations like that happening. So it's a fun group.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much again, Jenny, for joining us here on the podcast. And I hope we'll stay in touch. And when you've got something new going on, let us know, because I'd like to keep people posted. I think our audience is going to be really interested in whatever you're going to be teaching in the future.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Sustainable Living Podcast. For more sustainable living tips, join our Facebook group, Sustainable Living Tips, Tools, and Tactics, and follow us on Twitter.